Well, as we were talking at the top of the program, a busy day on Capitol Hill. Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy continues to maneuver toward consensus on a federal budget before government funding expires Saturday night. Based on my conversations with leaders and reports this afternoon, the House will be voting on the first of 11 remaining spending bills. Speaker McCarthy plans to bring a stopgap short-term government funding bill to the floor on Friday that will include provisions for spending cuts and border security to buy more time to work through the remaining appropriations bills. Now, it is a fluid and a turbulent process. And frankly, as I've been saying, it's not unlike what we saw in the speaker's race in January. This is a part of the process, no matter how the left frames it. So, look, if we want reform, it's going to take some time. And it's going to take some work. And fortunately, we've got some men and women on Capitol Hill working to bring that reform about. And joining me now from the Senate is one of those conservative leaders, Senator Mike Lee of Utah. He's trying to keep his Republican colleagues in line over there to back up conservatives in the House. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much, Tony. Good to be with you, as always.
We may get an update from the House floor here momentarily, so I hate to interrupt you, but we may have to do that. But you and I were talking earlier this morning. This really is a historic moment where we have Republican leaders in the House holding the line, doing something that hasn't been done since the 1990s, actually appropriate the way they're supposed to.
That's what they're moving toward. That's what they want. That's what the American people deserve. One of the problems we've had, one of the reasons why we're $33 trillion in debt is because what I call the law firm of Schumer, McConnell, McCarthy, and Jeffries, in all of its iterations over the last decade or two, every time we approach a spending deadline, they'll wait until the last possible minute to release a comprehensively, secretly negotiated bill, and then drop it on members as a take it or leave it proposition, being told, okay, you can vote against it, and which you may want to do because we haven't given you time to read it, understand it, debate it, discuss it with your constituents or colleagues and amend it. But, if you vote against it and the government shuts down, we will blame you.
Right.
And it'll be your fault. So a lot of members of Congress in both houses, both political parties, just reflexively give into that kind of bullying and do it. Now, to his credit, Speaker Kevin McCarthy has not pushed one of these omnibus spending bills since he's been Speaker. This is the first trial balloon through his speakership. But these things have happened over and over again. And the misdeeds of past Congresses and previous iterations of what I call the firm have trained members into not trusting them with very good reason. So that's why I applaud the members of Congress who have stood up to this and said, we're not going to do it. And we're going to demand that we have spending in government proceed line by line, item by item. When you loop everything together, when everything is tied to everything else, you run a substantial risk that government shutdowns will happen. And that shouldn't be the result, nor should members be forced into supporting perpetual multi-trillion-dollar deficits just because the firm adopts this bullying tactic.
Now, Senator, this practice has been going on for about a quarter of a century. All right, we're seeing this, we'll see a short-term CR that, will be followed by another one, backs lawmakers up until Christmas where they've got to adopt this omnibus bill. Everything's piled into it. And then that we just do this again over and over and over. So to get reform, it's going to be a little painful because we're going to break with how we've done things in the past. So, what I've been telling Americans, just hold on. It's going to be turbulent. Buckle your seatbelts. But this is, if we don't want to crash the plane, we're going to have to fly through the turbulence.
And have to fly right through it. And yeah, it'll be tough at times, and we'll be criticized at times. In fact, the mainstream media so badly wants bloated government spending facilitated by multi-trillion-dollar deficits that they'll ignore those things and hyper-focus on the discomfort of it all. And they always tend to blame only conservatives and looking the other way on what has really contributed to these root causes. But yeah, you're right. We've got to keep flying the plane through the turbulence. because the American people deserve nothing less. They've been mistreated for decades, and we've got to correct that wrong.
So, Senator, we've been talking about what the House has to do and what they're in the midst of, but let's talk about the Senate, because you've got the Senate scare leader, Chuck Schumer, pushing forward with a bloated temporary funding bill, business as usual, but you've got Republicans going along with it.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate last night, Tony. At 5 p.m., I received text of a 79-page spending bill, a short-term spending bill that would keep the government funded for 47 days between October 1st and November 17th. In that bill, we received the bill, all 79 pages of it, at 5 p.m. We had to vote on it at 5:30 p.m. 79 pages of spending bill text do not read like a fast-page short story. It can take days to digest that, because those are full of cross-references that to fully comprehend, you've got to have a staff and a whole bunch of books and people who know what they're doing, which we have, but it still takes days to understand that. They forced a vote on this within 30 minutes of when we saw it. Now, this doesn't contain increased funding or policy to deal with the humanitarian and rule of law crisis unfolding on our southern border. And no, it doesn't contain any of those things. What it instead contains is more than $6 billion of new funding on top of the $113 billion Congress appropriated last year for Ukraine. Only this $6 billion, in addition to it being on top of that $113 billion, this is just for the 47-day period between October 1st and November 17th. This is insulting to the American people. It's insulting to the people who work weeks, if not months, out of every year just to pay their federal taxes, only to be told your contribution to our government is not nearly enough because we're $33 trillion in debt. At a minimum, they deserve to have their own government adequately funded to perform the basic functions that only the United States government can perform for Americans.
Right.
Long before we ship it all over to Ukraine.
Well, like security. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit later about how so many retailers, grocery stores are shutting down because of crime, because we're not enforcing the law, and people can't go to the grocery store. People can't live near the southern border because we're being invaded. Seems like that's where some of that money should go. I wonder, but before we move on, though, the timing of that. Bringing us up right before Thanksgiving. This is classic. They want to put this before the Congress again, right before Thanksgiving, when everybody wants to get out of town, force another either omnibus bloated or another 15-day, 20-day CR that puts us up to Christmas. They do this every time.
Every time, Tony, this is the oldest trick in the book. Let me tell you exactly what's going to happen. Should this become law, which it shouldn't, but if it did become law, we would get right up to that November deadline, and just as sure as I'm confident that the sun will rise in the east tomorrow, we will face another continuing resolution, another short-term stopgap measure that will take us right up to the edge of Christmas. December 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, somewhere in there. And then Congress will be convened in December, a few days before Christmas. We'll get another bill on short notice and told either vote for the whole thing without amendment, without time to read it and discuss it and make it better, or the government's going to shut down. And not only will you be blamed for a shutdown at Christmas, but you won't even be able to go home and spend time with your family over the holidays.
Yes, you will be the Scrooge. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen the same. I've seen this play out over and over. And thankfully, Senator, there are some that are finally standing up to it. Senator Mike Lee, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us this afternoon.
Thank you, Tony.